Hi guys, so in this video I'm going to outline a sports nutrition concept known as the traffic light system. And it's a concept that is being implemented in many elite sports teams across the world. And it's actually recently receiving a lot of interest within professional football teams as well. And there are some professional football teams that are utilising it within their sports nutrition tactics and strategies. And if you're keen to learn more, click the link below and you'll find a great deal to get the Match Fit Nutrition Academy at a discount. Now, what the traffic light system is essentially a really simplified way for an athlete or a footballer such as yourself to know how many carbohydrates that you should be consuming at each individual meal. Quite simply, a green meal is representative of a high carbohydrate intake, an amber meal is a moderate carbohydrate intake, and a red meal is a low carbohydrate intake. And if you look at sports nutrition historically, every meal was essentially a green meal because the train of thought was that carbohydrates fuel high intensity activity, and so the more carbohydrates that we give to athletes, provided that their body weight is somewhat stabilised, the more carbohydrates they have, the better fueled they're going to be, the better they're going to perform in their training sessions and their matches. However, in recent years, I'd say the last 5 years, there's been a ton of research that has come out, and it's actually stemmed mainly from England. And this research is basically on how various dietary factors going into a training session actually dictate the response that you get from that training session. So for example, if you have an upcoming training session, let's say later this evening you have a strength session that's aimed at increasing muscle protein synthesis, then we know that various dietary factors in the lead up to that session, such as your carbohydrate intake, are going to be able to influence the amount of muscle protein synthesis that you receive from that given training session. Or similarly, if tomorrow morning you have an hour endurance session, and the aim of it is obviously to increase your endurance, but from a biological perspective to increase the amount of energy producing mitochondria within your muscle cells, then again we know that your carbohydrate intake or restricting your carbohydrate intake before that session might actually increase the training response and allow you to increase the amount of mitochondria within your muscle cells, especially over a long period of time if you are consistent with this. And so we know now that your nutrition is actually dictating the cellular and genetic response that you get from a training session. So if you typically train after eating a certain pre-exercise meal and you know you improve this much, then potentially by increasing or decreasing your carbohydrate intake before that session, you can therefore increase your performance and your adaptations by this much. And so that's one of the really, really interesting things about sport nutrition now, is that not only do we know that it can increase your performance, but we now know that it can increase your training adaptations. And if you're keen to learn more, click the link below and you'll find a great deal to get the Match Fit Nutrition Academy at a discount. Now, as a general rule of thumb, going back to the carbohydrate intake and the green, amber and red carbohydrate meals, the longer a training session is, or the more intense a training session is that you have coming up, then the more you're going to be required to increase your carbohydrate intake. So for strength or power-based sessions, or for really long endurance sessions, then of course a larger carbohydrate intake is needed to make sure you maintain a certain level of training, ensure you don't detrain yourself, and actually reduce your chances of injury within that training session. However, if you have, a skill-based session coming up that is low intensity, or you have an endurance session which is maybe an hour or less, then the need for carbohydrates is going to be dramatically reduced. And so there's simply no need to load up on carbohydrates for that training session. And for the reasons that I mentioned, you might actually be better off cutting back or restricting your carbohydrate intake before these sessions. So aiming for, red or amber based meals, in order to actually improve the training response that you get from these skill or low to moderate training intensity sessions. So it's definitely something to keep in mind going forwards and trying to implement within your football programs. Now, a last point to make with this before I end the video is that not only can restricting your carbohydrate intake before certain sessions increase these training adaptations, but it can actually make you better adapt to burning fat as a fuel source during activity and exercise. And this can be really important, especially when looking at how you perform during a match, because if you train your body to become better adept at burning fat for energy during low intensity activities such as walking or jogging around the pitch, then you're actually going to spare and preserve your carbohydrate stores within your muscle tissue for when they're most required and needed, which could be at the last 10 minutes of your football match, when you need to make a sprint down the pitch and score that winning goal. And so that's just another reason why you might not want to overconsume carbohydrates unnecessarily during training sessions which don't require that amount of carbohydrates in order to fuel that session. So hopefully you gained something from this video, guys. Again, I recommend going to matchfitconditioning.com, checking out the Messi Pro Football formula for a lot more information and nutrition tips. And if you found it interesting, please share this video and give it a like, and I'll catch you guys next time.